It is day 4 of the Trump administration, and the president has truly gotten to work on making his campaign promise to tamp down on illegal immigration a reality. 1,500 active duty military are already being deployed to the southern border, and the administration is considering sending thousands more soldiers, according to our reporting. His early executive actions have ranged from calling for expanded detention centers to effectively suspending asylum laws to try to end birthright citizenship for the American-born children of undocumented immigrants. That last one's already facing legal challenges since birthright citizenship is protected by the 14th Amendment. But to understand how we got here, let's take a step back and look at the numbers. According to Congressional Budget Office estimates, people they consider other foreign nationals, which includes those who entered the U.S. illegally, those whose temporary legal status has expired, and those who are awaiting court proceedings, they marginally went up and down during the first Trump administration. But on former President Biden's watch, that population increased every year by 850,000 in 2021, 2 million in 2022, 2.4 million in 2023, and 1.8 million in 2024. Now, unlawful crossings did fall after Mexican government cracked down on migrants, and the Biden administration added asylum restrictions last summer. But the Trump administration wants aggressive action, and communities across the country are bracing for ICE raids. That includes Chicago's predominantly Latino neighborhood of Little Village, where officials told Bloomberg that foot traffic is down 50%, and advocates are handing out Know Your Rights flyers. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security says locations that were once off limits to raids, like schools, hospitals, and places of worship, are now fair game. And some police departments, including in Chicago and Las Vegas, have vowed not to assist with immigration enforcement if a crime has not been reported. But the Justice Department says that could be grounds for prosecution.
So what might these raids look like, especially given the non-compliance on the local level? Joining us now is John Sandwig. He's a former acting ICE director. He served in the Obama administration. John, thank you very much for joining us. Just before the election, Tom Homans, the current ICE director, told 60 Minutes that there are not going to be mass roundups. There's not going to be concentration camps. He's heard all the scary language. It's ridiculous. So what is the reality, as someone who's been in the job that he's currently in, when you go out and you make raids and you find somebody, what happens? What's it like, the raid itself and then the aftermath?
Yeah, Tony, I think it's important to kind of break this down to the traditional way that ICE does business, where all the resources, that are applied to immigration enforcement come from the Department of Homeland Security. And what it looks like the administration is planning, because I think those are two dramatically different things. Traditionally, what ICE does is ICE starts looking at the criminal justice system. We look for targets, individuals who have been convicted of a serious crime, who for some reason or another escaped ICE's grasp as they went through jails or prisons. What then ICE does is kind of build a target list. We go out and knock on doors and try to find those individuals. When they're apprehended, they're put in detention, and then they go through the immigration court. But we've never seen anything like what's going on here, Tony, where the administration is going to kind of use all the resources of the entire federal government, including the military, to supplement DHS resources and do things kind of like what we've heard about, enlisting border alcohol and tobacco firearms, ATF agents, DEA agents, kind of signing up sheriff's offices across the country, and then building mass detention centers on military bases. This is going to be a completely different type of immigration enforcement.
So, John, advocates locally are handing out Know Your Rights flyers. They're trying to arm undocumented immigrants with some kind of defense. But are there any rights that they can use if they are arrested?
Well, traditionally, migrants in this country, I think this is something that a lot of people didn't understand. The biggest challenge ICE has always had to, ICE's capacity to deport is traditionally 250,000, you could argue up to 400,000. But the biggest challenge they face were these backlogs in the immigration courts. And I don't think most people understood that the majority of migrants in this country cannot be deported until they have an opportunity to present their defenses or their claims or, their right to stay in the United States to an immigration judge. Traditionally, that gives them a lot of rights, but it's very clear where the administration is going here. They're looking to strip the migrants of that due process. They know that mass deportation is impossible if you have to go through these backlogged immigration courts where there's 3 million pending cases and only 900 judges. On average, it's taking, in many cases, rather, 3 to 4 years for someone to be deported. So what they've done is they've characterized this as a foreign invasion. And you see that in all these executive orders. He treats this not as a domestic law enforcement problem, but an actual foreign policy, national security problem. And what he's doing is he's laying the groundwork to invoke the Alien Enemies Act, which he said in his inaugural speech he would do. And what that ostensibly would do, if it's not stopped by a court, would allow them to strip migrants of those due process. So a lot of those Know Your Rights bills and pamphlets that were given, some of them still apply, but the majority of them, and the opportunity to present legal defenses to an immigration judge, it's very clear that the administration is planning on stripping those by calling this, by invoking these military-esque authorities and invoking the Alien Enemies Act.
And John, a lot of sanctuary cities, places that have said that they are not going to fully comply with the federal government effort to deport people, they are not going to, aid federal agents necessarily fully. How much does that impede ICE?
It's been an irritant for ICE. Traditionally, it has not impeded ICE too dramatically. Look, the main way that has historically hurt ICE is ICE has visibility into every single person booked into all the jails and prisons in the United States. And so what ICE wants to do, and what we want to do for officer safety reasons, is take custody of criminals when they're booked in a jail because they're in a secure environment. And frankly, it's also more efficient to take custody of people there rather than going out in the streets. But so the sanctuary policy, but even if we're sanctuary policies where you have some cities, let's say you say we're not, typically they would only say we're not going to share with you people we deem not to be public safety threats. But there were some jurisdictions that probably, in my opinion, went too far and would say individuals convicted of violent crimes, we will not let ICE officers take them into custody. But in those cases, ICE would then just have to go onto the streets and find those individuals. But again, we're going well beyond all of that now. We've never seen, the reaction to sanctuary policies traditionally has been political. We complain about it publicly, highlight how dangerous people are being released on the streets. But as you noted earlier in your reporting, this administration has now told the Department of Justice that could be considered violations of federal law, harboring migrants, and that is going to be a top priority for the Department of Justice to potentially pursue criminal investigations of state officials who do not cooperate with this mass deportation effort.
It's arguably the biggest story of our time, both the surge in immigration and now this success politically of mass deportation as a campaign and now as governance in action. We're going to keep following it. John Sandwyk, thank you very much. Appreciate it.